Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Sol Hour. Sun is in the 8th house in Leo in this chart. The moon is 22ing. Okay. The moon is on the ruler of my 2nd house, and I was going to do the second part of the eclipses. And what I thought about in the meantime is very ominous. So, while the moon is 22ing and still applying to sextile Mars and separating from a sextile to the nodes, I want to take you through something that is personal to me, and yet because it's to do with an outer planet, is going to be very significant, and very likely it's an omen towards the eclipses. So for me, every time I was trying to basically save money, resources, whether it's food or even document pictures, or money, okay, then what happened was there would be a crisis and that would be depleted. And there would be a change, of course, in my life. So when I was opening basically a savings account, it was around 2008, and then it was the financial crisis through which I went into debt, um, went through a mental health crisis following not having a job that respects my sovereignty, and then that was the way that I was given an option to study, because I didn't find any grants and any ability to work and combine studies with my work, because there was no, not because of, in retrospective, not because of me. I mean, I have problem with standing with on my feet, and I have problem with like, but look, when I do astrology, it's not a problem. When I speak the truth, it's not a problem for me to speak. And that's why I couldn't speak at work. I would have allergies and stuff. So what happened was that because of the corruption in the working market, I couldn't have a jobby job that I can combine with studies, and in that way, it took a complete crisis and getting in debt to be acknowledged and to have kind of like a rehabilitation in the form of funding for my then first degree. So that was 2008. When I was saving for rent, that was interesting because I was saving. Basically, I was saving for paying rent and putting some money aside, and try to do all these nice things with the envelope and put it in cash and so on. Eventually, after the Me Too, that was interesting because with that one, instead of going for like rent, it went to courses around relational skills and courses around. I think it would be already. It would not be the aromatherapy, but it would already be the sex positive courses that later I would work basically selling. So that one was unique, but definitely the money did not go to where I was planning for it to go. I did have money to pay the rent, but it's just not. It didn't work out with saving the money. That's what I'm saying. Um, then when I was saving documentation, several times when I was saving documentation, basically my phone got stolen or got broken, or I had to leave and the phone was there and so on. So that was also on a digital level. I have Mercury in the 2nd house. And then when I was during COVID, I began to buy more things for the person that I was cohabiting with, and we were good friends for a decade, so that was not an ish. And I was like, oh, they like to eat, like, I don't know, buckwheat and stuff, so I just made sure that there is enough of the dry food and water and everything that I could get my hands on, or cleaning stuff that I could get my hands on with my salary, when I get it, so that I transmuted money to resources and tried to save in that way, and in that way make sure that both me and the person that I cohabit with enjoy that. It led into a situation of financial crisis due to a series of being targeted, And then that person had to buy me food. Okay, he didn't have to buy me food, but it was kind of like putting it on the other trajectory. Later we would separate in a very um, very intricate situation, because he was also targeted individual, and what they're being forced to do is horrendous. It's ritual abuse, basically ritual. You partook in ritual abuse. It's nothing that anybody consents to, but I had to get out of there. But that was really funny because then he thought that I'm indebted to him, which was kind of like, if I think to the trajectory that began with me buying more food and making sure that there is enough for anybody in the house to have resources. And then when I moved to the next apartment, I was basically collecting food, kind of for the apocalypse. So it was just collecting dry food and so on. Um, and that unfortunately ended up with um, basically some sort of a trafficking Epstein-like scandal that I ran for my life from, and and the food was not coming with me, nor were my things, and so on. So that was that was kind of like the last one. And I'm like, well, there's something really interesting that when I take financial responsibility, whether it's in money, in resource, in documentation, then what happens is that I lose everything, and I have Mercury opposing Pluto. This is where it stops being a Shirley story and starts being a story that's going to be interesting for anybody who listens to the omens. I have Rahu with Chiron in the fourth house, but in Gemini with the ruler Mercury in the second house, which means that I'm meant to innovate on and curate a wound around basically making money, having houses, in having housing, okay? Or even, but to be very honest, this is just not just housing, it has to do with real estate. And it is about having real estate independently of the ability to work, but it's not about hoarding real estate. Okay? So it doesn't symbol, if I take a look at my second house, the way it operates, think about, I have a Mercury job for you. Look, imagine somebody trying to swap destinies, but it's with a targeted individual. So so they might suffer from that. And but imagine somebody trying to swap destinies because they want the second house of someone, and it's like, it's my second house. Okay, so there is something alongside the fact that Neptune is going to spend now 15 years in my second house. There's something that requires an innovative Aries approach to resources, housing, possessions, money, currency, and it all aims at, and this is where it starts being ominous for the upcoming eclipses, it aims at something, there is something in this chart that doesn't allow savings or keeping of resources. There's something that with Pluto you always purge it completely, and it's kind of like a compost. It requires a different type of tending to resources and wealth, and it kind of genuinely aims at genuinely being happy, even if you're owning nothing, so to speak. Okay, to be very frank, not the marketized version of that. It's like it requires the native. If I take a look at it from the perspective of an astrologer, let's say I would have a client like that, I would say, is this a WEF person? Because it's kind of giving being happy while owning nothing. It's like every at least 9 months, or every Pluto cycle in your life, your entire, oh wait, it's not just money you try to set aside. It's not just your income, but it's also your housing, and could be your partner, or you and your partner, if you have like a joint venture, going completely into transmutation. It's kind of like, it's a symbolism of a business person but it's a symbolism of a new approach to business, and it definitely would require an infrastructure of housing, food, and everything that doesn't stay. It's not about hoarding, but you have to have, it's kind of like a Confucian approach to money, because Confucius is so compatible with the internet because he was paying an emphasis. This is what we were marketed. I don't know the true story, okay? But he was paying an emphasis of having the access to the resources, whether it's information or anything else. So it was about having with whatever I need whenever I need that, and not having achieved that through the usual means of kind of like save for a rainy day. The option save for a rainy day was nullified in my chart from the get-go. And so I would be forced to look at wealth from a different type of trajectory. The teachings would be paramount as Aries ingressed into as Chiron ingressed into Aries, which was my previous video about Chiron ingress into Taurus. And there was a teacher who she was going through her Pluto square, and her company was becoming international, and she escaped the cult. And she said that she met a wealthy man along the trajectory of her life. Okay, again, this is the story what she told. I don't know what is the truth, but and that man taught her a path that was called the path of freedom. In that path, she learned to be okay with basically having the minimum of things, and then she could be happy with having things but not being attached to having things. During the COVID, I went through an extreme crisis to try to explore that, and while I can definitely attest that it works, but I went through that so consecutively that it was overwhelming. And eventually it caused me to actually hold on to my possessions more because I was so traumatized by the practice of detachment. Although the practice of detachment was very true, like I would let go of having almost anything, and I would get that double times. Even when people try to take something from me or something like that, usually maybe even if it's difficult to let go of, then I usually get kind of like regeneration of that. But it's still a crisis, okay? It's a hard aspect with Pluto there. And so that was the first teaching of kind of like the path of freedom, which is something that's going to be very important, especially with Neptune in my second house. And so the understanding from very young age, I was exposed to the fact that business people is usually real estate, okay? Then, and I don't mean that in having houses, I mean that in having the right to dig up minerals, the right to dig up resources, and so on. And this, my chart is kind of like a completely new approach on that, because it's not like me going through, I don't know, if I take a look at Donald Trump, then what I learned, it was actually about Donald Trump, that I learned that he lost, I think he said he lost more than he earned as a business person. And so from a very young age, I grew up to understand that not as a failure, but as a true facets of innovation. And indeed, I have second house Aries, which is about entrepreneurship. Another person I was exposed to was Richard Branson, whose chart I already did, and he was getting frustrated constructively. So this is something that played a huge role in my life. And whenever I get pissed or I get mad, I'm like, okay, let's get at the core essence of why am I mad here? Because there's an opportunity. It is a blue ocean. And so wherever I am bravely tending to, if you take a look at particularly Jupiter point of Thales, it already began with Rockefeller Astrolix, but Jupiter point of Thales on Beachwood, you will see an opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. But again, the minute I try to give you, let's say, my email, I would need to reopen another account. So there's something that's really calling for a holistic approach that is emphasizing having what you need when you need that, and letting go of having to rely on savings. Now, this is a billionaire's problem as much as it is a common person problem. And it is something where a lot of people cry about their savings not yielding and so on. Neptune aims at the holistic approach to that. But even when I look at something from the point of resources or gathering resources, gathering food, and so on and so forth, I also see that this is a very big deal. In fact, my colleague Austin Kopuk recently did a Mars talisman, which is at the end decan of Capricorn, which, by the way, is squaring my Mercury. And the way that the last decan of Capricorn is squaring of the last decan of Aries is because Aries is about the opportunity and necessity, and how sometimes even lack of something presents a new opportunity, while Capricorn is all about the last decan of Capricorn is the final catch. Okay, it's kind of like you've been strategic, you've been this, you've been predicting a certain trajectory, and then you grab the gold, you grab what is yours. And this is in square relations with the Aries tactic, which is you have been, if you try to do it the Saturn way and you're Arian, then basically you're aiming to fail because your trajectory is about invention. Think particularly, I'm Pisces ascendant, but also Virgo ascendants that have Aries in the 8th house need to be closely looking at that. It's not going to be true for all charts. I do have the Chiron in Mercury, Mercury in Aries, and so on. There are other significations. But I definitely see how Virgo ascendants, including NATO, by the way, which is Virgo ascendant, can be caught with the foot in the mouth when the money time is in. And so and that is simply because Aries is about that innovation. So it's not working against them that they're caught with the foot in the mouth. It's actually forcing them to innovate and push forward, and actually it was actually increase their wealth, but it's not going to increase their wealth in a way of hoarding wealth as much as in consecutive new innovation, consecutive beginnings. Maybe with Saturn Aries, okay, that can be a bit different. But all in all, if I think of where the approach or the mindset of the Mars exalted in the last decan of Capricorn, which is the final catch and holding on to those resources, this is antithetical to anything Aries. Now, after all of this conversation, I want us to begin to look at the second part of 2026 eclipses, and I will see with you together how does it all combine. So we are taking a look at, let's see if we have eclipses. How did I even get to the eclipses page? Maybe it's open. Lunar and solar. This is the one. I don't remember how I got here. I Googled it. So, Wednesday, August 12th, 2026, total solar eclipse on 20 degrees Leo, with the ruler of Rahu, which is in 0 degree Pisces, Jupiter in Leo. So Jupiter will already be in Leo. Mercury, ruler of Ketu, also in Leo. So, and we have Ketu on Regulus. So this is going to be, first of all, highly affecting Regulian figures. So leaders, royal families. It can range all the way from losing the mandate of the heaven to a fall from grace to whatnot. because we are purging anything Leo-like. Okay, this is um, this is where with Ketu, the physical manifestation of leadership or even visibility and personality is lost or purged, and what we gain is actually the non-physical. Okay, now even the ruler of Rao is with Ketu. So religious leaders, oh, we actually have a Pope Leo. I think that what it symbolizes is not that he's going to die or be assassinated or anything like that, but definitely that the symbol of the papacy through Pope Leo is going to be um, way more symbolic than physical in some sort of a way, or that Pope Leo will be leading a certain religious trajectory that is different to what we would expect, okay? Because this is a Roman Catholic leader, and that's like it's screaming the Pope. I don't think he's going to die or be assassinated. There's nothing here that is on the lethal degrees. So it's not given like assassination or death or anything like that. Um, and all these things in Leo is just, it's kind of like perhaps the Pope himself is going to be a bit of an apostle. And it can even be that that it's predicted, okay? There was a lot of discussion of the second coming of Christ, and I don't know, okay? I don't understand in these things, but definitely I think that there is some sort of, why do I say an apostle? Because the apostles had a trajectory of losing faith and regaining faith, and the physical manifestation changing in some sort of a way. Um, so I would definitely be looking at the Vatican. Certain royal families can go, if I think about England, that was going from Catholicism to something that is a bit more allowing, and that type of like a different view on Catholicism. It's all the way there, okay? Monarchies facing a trajectory. If you think about Voltaire, Voltaire escaped France to England, and he was pro-monarchy. So this is a part of why he had to escape. Um, but he escaped to England because in England he would have freedom of speech when it comes to separating the church and the monarchy, and he was an avid secular person. Eventually he reconnected with God or the divine in a way that is his own, and some people say that not at all, okay? Because back then it was God equals king equals, and actually if I think about the great benefactor for separating the church and the state is the Vatican. Because if the king is not the representative of the church, of the God, then the closest that we have is basically the Pope. So So there is this tension between wanting everybody to be Roman Catholic and wanting to preserve the leadership position, where if the Roman Catholics kind of preach for the monarch king, that is the kind of still for that type of king is God monarchy, um, the papacy has a conflict of interest with that, which basically serves freedom of religion, democracy, and even the royal families. So there's just an intricacy around religion, leadership, on a very big scale, because it's 0 degree of Pisces, and it's going all the way to the apostles, the having to travel a long way to spread religion, and then losing and regaining your religion along the path. And anything Piscean, okay? global religion, one world religion, and secluded places, traveling far. There's nothing other than Rahu in Pisces, and Jupiter is in Leo. So Jupiter is the big open heart, the desire to be visibly religious. We are purging it. You think about France. France ruled out the display of religious related things. I don't know how the Orthodox Jews survived there, because they forbade any public display of religious features. For example, if I would go with a talisman and to go to visit France, I would need to wear a shirt where I would hide the talisman under the shirt or in my bra, because of respect that my spiritual practices are not to be practiced in public. I should not wear a display of that, okay, in public. Actually, I have a colleague that does astrological talismans, and she makes sure that she hides the inscription on the jewelry that she makes, the talismanic jewelry, so that it is discreet. And in that way, she can also do that in France, because then you can wear a talisman because it doesn't show publicly that it has, I don't know, a Jupiter inscription on it. So we are going towards such a time, which can give us a lot of respect for religion in a very roundabout way, because this is where we are purging the visibility of our religious practices. So that means it would not be, flashing the cross, or flashing the Star of David, or wearing a niqab. Okay, those things are not going to be accepted altogether for all religions. This is my prediction for this eclipse. And again, you can say that this is, we need to be able to show, we don't have to hide our religion, but this is also a very respectful thing, where we cannot be discriminated on the basis of our religion. If I think about Syria, and in Syria before the revolution, there was no problem to be Christian, but after the revolution, people would be questioned for their religion in the streets, so they could not. However, this particular eclipse is not giving war to me as much as it's kind of like new standard of purging the visibility around beliefs, religion, or not openly displaying them. It doesn't give war necessarily. Okay, yes, Mars is in 0 degrees Cancer, but again, in itself, it's squaring Neptune, but again, in itself, I don't necessarily see that as a result of war, rather than perhaps even a decision that honors and respects the people and the leaders, regardless of what religion are they practicing, or that requires us to separate religion from being visible. That's the symbol. That's what I see here. Now let's go. For example, this thing would probably not go after that eclipse, okay? Because while this is a painting, it's Deneb Algedy, and it displays a public display of my spiritual practices, okay? It's a talisman. So I would have to put something where it would be in an invisible layer. Can I go to the eclipses? Okay, the eclipses page. And last eclipse is 2026, August 28, and this would be in 4 degrees. It's a partial lunar eclipse in 4 degrees Pisces. So this eclipse is closer to a fixed star called Fomalhaut. Rao is already in Aquarius, which means the ruler of Rao is Saturn, and that makes Mars more involved in this eclipse. Not only is it ruled by the moon, and this is a lunar eclipse, but also Mars is ruling over Saturn, and Saturn and Mars become more involved. Saturn is retrograde at the time of the eclipse. Again, this is 28 August 2026. Sun with Ketu, Mercury with Ketu, Jupiter in Leo, okay, but Jupiter is the ruler of the moon, it's not the ruler of Rao anymore, and yet there is a nice reception between Rao and Ketu in the sense that the ruler of the moon, and this is a lunar eclipse, so that's important, is in the sun, sign of the sun, and the sun is closer to Ketu. That ruler is co-present with Ketu, ruled by the sun, and the sun conjoins its ruler in 4 and 5 degrees respectively, Virgo, which is again ruled by that Mercury. So there is a T-square with Uranus, and this is beginning to display what I told you about the entire 18 minutes of introduction. The people all around the world are having a reconnection with the emotional facet of spirituality, whether it is through crisis or even war. And the challenge with Uranus in Gemini is that there is a calling for unity among the people during a civil war time. Now, what we are going to be okay, we have a story. I'm half Dutch, and one of the candidates for upcoming elections, I don't know what will be, because the elections are in October, end of October, and there is the September eclipses. So one of our candidates, right-wing leader Geert Wilders, not only does he have like prominent placements in those very degrees, but also he was calling for an exit, which means bringing back the Gilden. And I've been going, will hurt you, bring us Gilden, and so on. But what I think we're going to see, definitely in Netherlands, but also in other countries, there is going to be a question of separating from the digital euro. The question of will that Gilden be digital? Well, with those Mercury placement, it's giving yes, okay. And the question of civil war times, and the war can be a debate about the globalists versus the people that want to separate from globalism fiscally. Now, the thing is that people are reconnecting with their spirituality, but at the same time, they have to take sides. So let's take it. Yes, putting Wilders on the spot again. So let's put Wilders on the spot. Wilders has been calling for an exit, and this is a study case of a person who wants to lead their country away from globalism and away from the euro, and stay in a small country. Okay, stay in a sovereign country, and at the same time, he is also wanting, which aligns with that, wanting to deport the people that do not align with what it means to be Dutch, okay? So whether it is about learning the language, or whether it is about Islamic values that don't go with Christian values, okay? Um, Again, you will have to deport Mormons as well. but but that is for example, let's say you are Dutch and you absolutely want to feel then, but you don't necessarily want to deport all the Moroccans that don't speak Dutch. Okay, um, then this is where people can be torn between reconnecting with a certain leadership on the basis of separation from that grand multinational unity. But if you think about it, all those right-wing populist leaders are very unified. And this is where we have a moon Rahu here. Now, Rahu in Aquarius, um, ruled by Saturn, Saturn in the sign of Mars, very fiscal, debate the structure of business in the nation state, the participation of the sovereign in multinational trade versus local trade. So there are going to be a lot of questions where people are going to be debating, and a lot of these questions, these currency questions, have to do with how strong is the currency, how much is my sovereign ideal or sovereign nationality ideal is in alignment with the strength of the coin. For example, when Israel was under Begin, then it stood in the face of both the Russian and the American pressure while having complete austerity. So it tried to do a local economy and maintain its sovereignty in the face of worldly pressure. To those people that have a lot of complaints about Israel, they need to go back to Begin and see what happened when Israel tried to not succumb to being the little devil of America or the little Garmushka of the Soviet Union. Because back then it was the Soviets. So, and this is something that, for example, countries like Palestine will have to ask themselves, how do they mean to tend to that challenge, to the fiscal challenge of sovereignty and to the sovereignty challenge of global trade? And this is a question for the WEF as much as for those who are practicing the Brexit and Nexit, as much as for new sovereign countries, and we're going to have a booming of sovereign countries. And this is the question of, will my currency hold? Do I actually want to, whether it is the digital euro, whether it's the one world digital coin, it's always the question, will people actually trade in that coin? And in Uranus Gemini, they are more likely to trade in your currency, for those of you who are doing currency, when you grant labor rights, children rights, women rights. Okay, so for those of you who are doing currencies and digital currencies, your currency is more likely to be traded in the coming 7 years if you appease Aldebaran. Okay, if you basically if your currency is closer to abolishing slavery, closer to abolishing ritual abuse, and I've seen interesting innovations there, and the challenges that are paramount. Okay, my life was at incredible risk. I went through something that is indespeakable because I supported one of those initiations, and um, and at the same time, we can't escape the fact that the currencies that are going to be more traded are the ones that are going to be favorably associated with the labor union, with suffragist movements, with abolishing slavery. And the currencies that are of the other party are going to be, at least for the coming 7 years, less preferred. Okay, I'm not saying they're going to tank, I'm not saying they're going to disappear, but it definitely will be less preferred. And at the same time, austerity, Saturn in Aries, can occur for sovereign countries that want to not succumb to imperialist or global pressure. Okay, think about Israel during the time of Begin and the austerity it faced. Okay, people were standing in line to have butter and milk. Um, so this is also something that those who are busy with the founding of Palestine also need to think, and any other sovereign countries. Okay, also want to take a look at my astrological consideration for declarations of independence. For the people, you want to make sure that you see the chart. I tell in spirit of matter and in Jupiter point of Thales, I tell all the significations of what you need to look to see that the natal chart of the Declaration of Independence actually represents you. Aries is all about people not being ignorant of the knowledge that they need to be represented, and that knowledge being made simple and accessible to the people so that we can claim sovereignty and that we can claim democracy and a foundation of a country. Okay, the country is practically illegal when it doesn't represent the people. Me setting more and more standards as we go. so so when I think whether it's about sovereign country or when I think about Nexit-like moves, then all of these measures are going to be taken into considerations, because both are a move towards a sovereign, distinct state that can participate in international trade but not be subservient to it. And that's the point. That being said, we're going to have to ask ourselves, how do we fund for such economy in a way that respects labor rights and that abolishes any type of slavery, that respects women's rights, okay, and not only cisgender women rights and not only transgender women rights, okay? So, and children's rights. So it's not about child labor. Um, and those are all challenges that any country that wants to either be a new sovereign country or to Brexit, Nexit, whatever, will need to face, because people are all really happy to declare independence, but they're not so happy to stand in line for milk, even if it is oat milk, particularly if the milk entails oat. And I will end with that.